Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Disappearances news video. Well, for this one, I wanted to talk about a great news article that I just read the other day. Just came out, and it has to do with Unsolved Mysteries. And this is, of course, because Unsolved Mysteries just debuted its brand new season there on Netflix. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because apparently this new series now on Netflix is creating a whole new phenomenon when it comes to people getting interested in these cases, not just in the new episodes, but also past cases from, who knows, over 500 plus episodes that are available on streaming formats. And I wanted to talk about that because there's a huge difference now compared to today than when it comes to back then as far as these episodes, because it all culminates to this. There's the opportunity that so many of these lost cases can now be solved because of the internet, because of so many people now having streaming options and being able to see this and become their own little mini detectives. That's essentially wanted to create this video here, because that's essentially what the article was highlighting as well. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. In this case, having to do with the new season of Unsolved Mysteries, potentially solving new cases and past cases as well. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all that fascinating info here. For starters, I'll include the link below so that way you can see the article there from Variety. It's a really good read. I highly recommend it when you have a chance to see it, because essentially it's an interview with the producer by the name of Terry Dunn Mirror. I hope I'm saying that last name correctly, but Terry Dunn Mirror is pretty much the guy that has been there from the beginning. This series is now 30 plus years old, over 500 episodes, but he's pretty much been there the entire way. He started it from the beginning, and this is his baby, and he's been there ever since. And so with this new debut, they're on Netflix, involving, I think it's, what is it, 6 new episodes? I'm sorry, I don't have Netflix myself, so some of y'all might have to fill me in on some of that info. But this series is now creating interest, not just with the new cases that they're talking about, but also all those years and years and years, hundreds of episodes worth of cases that people can see back then. In fact, if you look at this shot here, this is from the Unsolved Mysteries website itself. You can see all the different options available right now to stream. And the ones that I've circled are the ones that I tested out, where if you're like me and you don't have really any subscription options around, these are completely free. Like Amazon will be free as long as it's with ads. YouTube the same, they'll run a little bit of ads. Tubi, Crackle, and then Roku even as well. If you add Roku, if you have a Roku and you add a specific channel there, then you can stream all the past episodes there. So many options, and then the rest of them, there'll probably be some free options that I might have missed on there too. But the whole point is, this new era of Netflix's Unsolved Mysteries is creating all these wonderful little mini detectives that people are now interested in them. They want to right a wrong, as the article stated. They want to be able to use as much resource as they can online themselves, because there's so much now compared to back then available at people's fingertips, and then that way they can see maybe if there's a chance that things will be solved. That's essentially why I do my own videos here, as you'll see in some of these screenshots, is because there's that slim chance, who knows, maybe somebody will see this video and it'll spark some interest involving these cold cases, and then there's always the opportunity that somebody somewhere will then be able to have that right amount of info, that tiny info, that's all that's needed to help spark things and then help solve the situation. But yeah, that's essentially the way he's doing it is exactly the way that I'm doing it with my channel, and so it was great to read that information there too. In fact, I'll include some quotes from the article that stood out. Like here, they were asked specifically, how has social media changed the reception of Unsolved Mysteries? And he highlighted there that anything back then, like in the 80s, 90s, and so on, you only had a chance to see it on one single network at that time, unless you had the advent of technology, like when it came to recording things like on a VCR and so somewhat, because even then that was really expensive back then you were pretty much on your own. You had just one episode to see once, and maybe there would have been some interest then, but eventually that episode's interest faded because there was no longer going to be the opportunity to see it again. But as he says here, so people have an opportunity to look at those more in-depth again if they want to, and they don't have that kind of commentary. Everyone can now be some kind of person that could try to solve these cases and come up their own theories. It's amazing. I wanted to highlight this next part too. Even Netflix is getting in on this. There's a Reddit thread that I found where they have placed a whole amount of evidence, stuff that was, I'm guessing, for the new cases, and then also potentially past cases, and then that way people can in turn use this freely to be able to try to figure out something. Maybe it'll again drum up the right interest from the right person, and then that person is the one that'll have that tiny bit of info needed, that spark to be able to link things together. And so it's amazing stuff, and so that's why again why I love this particular bit of info. And then there's another quote that he mentioned here, or another question, and that was, what's the old case that you think is going to crack soon? Here's the perfect example of it when it comes to all of this new information and how it helps solve the past. And so apparently it has to do with some John Doe, somebody that's committed suicide in a church, but then was never solved in terms of the identity of this person. Well, lo and behold, a VHS copy of Unsolved Mysteries was there within the case file. Ironically, like that was the only piece of evidence that was there. And so the new investigator today, this time period, in other words, was trying to see if they could solve it. And so they ended up contacting the makers of Unsolved Mystery, and then they did have something, like in terms of, I think it was a little notepad that he said that was left behind. And then now this guy has stated that the investigators come back, and he said they might have figured out who this man was. So amazing stuff, isn't it? When it comes to that, like you would never have had that solved back then because of the technology, but now with, in this case, the investigator, and then using whatever he had at his possession at that point, today he'll be able to then use it to hopefully solve it. And as he says, it's always for the people who don't know what happened to their loved ones. Those are the ones that are the ones that are most left shocked with what occurred, because there's so much mysteriousness associated with that case. And then lastly is this, there's another great quote involving sad but good news, meaning anything that's considered unsolved but then gets solved, yes, it's sad, and obviously there'll be some finality to it that's tragic, but at the same time it provides that answer. It'll absolutely make sure that people don't just get left hanging afterward. And like I mentioned a minute ago, it's about families and about making sure that their hopes, even if they're dashed, like when it comes to finding out really bad news about a situation, at least they'll know that the case gets solved. I love that quote too, whenever someone was asking like if there was any tips that were coming in, and they said yes, and then they're so excited about the new tips that come in because of so much opportunity available with each new tip. And then the article goes even further into that, like it showcases that there's a crew working on unsolved mysteries, that they receive these tips, and then they'll in turn be able to send them over to the proper authorities. By the way, I wanted to mention that too here. Like on my end, if anyone has any info, anything like that, like in terms of that type of stuff that would really help seal making a case solved, please, don't send it my way. Like send it directly to the authorities or the person best suited for that particular case, whoever that local authority is there. And then that way they'll be able to take a look and then find out what's going on, because they're the experts, they're the ones that can handle this situation. And then that way they'll be able to hopefully get this case resolved. But isn't that amazing? Like it's so great that this new series there on Netflix is once again triggering everything when it comes to not just the new cases but also the old ones that are there. And in fact, when I was reading some of the information on the new cases, it sounds like there's like 6 new episodes, and then there's going to be another 6 if I'm not mistaken, so a total of 12. And so some of y'all might have to let me know how the new cases are going when it comes to that. And also I wanted to mention one last thing. The difference between now and back then was, I think there was a revival sometime in like the mid 2000s, but that was that weird no man's land when it came to internet. Like people had internet, but it was just getting to a point where stuff was getting good, like in terms of like YouTube just barely came out in the mid 2000s, so definitely there wasn't that much information out there on that end. Same with Facebook came out somewhere in the mid 2000s. I think it was like 2004. and then it didn't grow until a little bit afterward, and so on. So 2007, when the revival happened, the original revival of Unsolved Mysteries, it's not like it took the world by storm, only because there wasn't that much ability to do so. It would have been just shown, I think it was on cable, on FX, and even then, not too many people have cable as far as those kind of options, so it just would have gotten lost, let alone having streaming options afterward to see it. So it was that same weird world where you only had a chance to see it once on cable, and then that's it. There wouldn't have been much to discuss afterward, let alone on the internet to try to find out. But now, things are absolutely different. Now you absolutely have multiple streaming options. You can rewatch it again and again, and then whatever piques your interest, someone else says, I know that road that they're talking about, and then they bring up more details. You look up that information online, and then that's when, boom, you have that rest of the link that's needed to help solve it. So great stuff. But again, if anybody has any more info on at least the new series, have you had a chance to watch it yet? It's out on Netflix now. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I don't have Netflix on my end. Probably no plans on getting it anytime soon. But at least on the old episodes, all those previous the previous options that I showed on that image, they're still available to this day. So you can see all 500 plus episodes at your leisure. And who knows, maybe you'll be able to then help solve some of this information too. It'll help trigger that information needed for it. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.